This is on. All right. Welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall. The informational meeting will begin in approximately 1 minute.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our Sioux Falls City Council informational meeting. Today's date is Tuesday, April 7th. This is our first meeting in the month of April. Welcome to everybody. We appreciate your interest in our local city government. Call our meeting to order, and we will begin with our staff report. I think Dave Bixler, did you have anything? I know Jim David had an absence today, so Dave Fifley, I think, is going to cover for that absence. Mr. Fifley, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Karski. Dave Fifley with the City Attorney's Office. I'll do my best to fill in for Jim today. Tonight on item 40 on your agenda will be a proposed ordinance for your consideration that will revise the ordinances that generally cover citizen boards. The genesis of this project was a top 10 project for the city. Kendra Simmonsma was a project manager, and then along with Julie Wilson, who's the mayor's secretary, as well as Carrie Hainsel of our office and myself, we met with all the liaisons from all 42 citizen boards. For your information, there are 340 citizens that are serving on our boards. 21 are established by ordinance, 10 are by state statute, 2 are by charter, 4 are by agreement, and another 5 are by resolution. So tonight, the ordinances that we are requesting changes were just based upon both a legal review of it as well as conversations with those city staff liaisons. I worked with Jim David extensively regarding the actual proposals themselves, and I'll just describe it briefly for you and take any questions that you may have. It's amending section 30.025, A, B, and C, all specifically recognize that there are some boards that are established by state law. That just was not clear before, where one of them says like a majority vote of the council could disestablish or disband a citizen board, whereas if it's by statute that you have to have that board, for instance, the Planning Commission, we want to make it very clear that, or unless specified by state law. Part E is going to establish a situation where we had a number of citizen board members who are filling in some unfulfilled terms of people departing, retiring, moving, etc. We wanted to give them an opportunity to serve 2 full terms, especially when we were getting very qualified people. We were having instances where people were doing, say, a 1-year left on a term, then coming in and doing another 4-year term, and we thought, for the council's consideration, let's see if we can have 2 full terms plus, as long as they haven't served more than half of another term, that would be acceptable. And so that's the proposal that Jim and I are proposing there. And then also this would make the staggering of terms allowed specifically for any board. In reviewing all the different enabling legislation for the board, some boards allowed for staggering, others didn't really talk about it, so we've kind of tried to do it informally. But here we're just going to say we're going to stagger them where possible, and it'll be easier because if they're serving less than half of a term, they can still do 2 more terms. The other changes are in 30.026. It'll just mirror state law that requires draft minutes of any citizen board meeting to be posted on the city website within 10 working days. That's state law, and it'll just be codified in our ordinance as well. And then another change that is proposed is that the city staff liaison would keep the minutes as well as posting the final approved minutes on the city website. When these ordinances were written almost a decade ago, they were actually filed with the clerk's office. And that was for purposes of having a central filing system and somewhere where citizens could go and receive minutes, copies of minutes from any board, but now they all go on the website and get them. And as far as Lori Hogstad and I talked about it, we don't have citizens coming in and asking for paper copies anymore. And frankly, if they did, they would just go onto the website and copy them off for the person. So it really makes no sense to have Lori's office keep 42 binders anymore. And then the other thing is we've added a new section under that where each board would be required to review their bylaws on an annual basis. So that way we would just continually have that updated. So is there any questions on that item?
Thank you for that brief explanation, David. Michelle, Councilor Erpenbach.
Question about terms on those 42 different boards. Are all the term lengths the same, or are those different too? Really, they're different.
They are different. They go between 3 to 5 years, depending on which board. Planning Commission, for instance, is 5. That's a highly technical, requires a lot of knowledge accumulation, and they do need 5 years to really hit the ground running, be able to learn what's going on and be continuing, but a lot of them are about 3 years.
So those bylaws that they're going to review every year, they're bylaws that are specific to that particular board?
Most of the boards, by ordinance, the term is set by ordinance. So the bylaws don't do that. The bylaws more just set up their procedures. If there's something antiquated that they're doing procedurally or what have you, they just need to be reviewed every year to make sure we're...
No, I get that. One more if I could? So would there be any value in making them all the same? So they're all 5-year terms, or they're all 3-year terms, or is that just way too much detail? Fine, strike from the record.
Beyond my pay grade, as they would say.
Thank you, though. It's a great project.
Councilor Anderson.
David, for all these different boards that we have, citizens are applying for them. How long do we keep those applications?
About 2 years, Counselor, is the usual. As you can imagine, some of the specialized boards, it gets more difficult to find folks to fill those, and thank you for bringing that up. Mechanical, plumbing, electrical inspectors and examiners, those are sometimes very difficult to get applicants for that fill that specific area of expertise. And I did fail to mention, and I apologize, we would have a 4-month overlap. So in case we are having trouble finding qualified applicants, we get a little more time, another 120 days to go out and seek those types of persons. And those are the boards that are difficult to fill at times.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
How many people serve on citizen boards, Dave?
Approximately 340.
320?
40.
340, that is a lot. And I know there was, with Kendra, there was a study on the function and value of each board, and that's where most of these recommendations or these changes are coming from. So it's nice to have a comprehensive look at this type of stuff. Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, Dave, how many boards do we have in the city?
42, Councilor.
42, okay.
Councilor Jameson?
If I could talk about boards on a different manner. On item number 39 tonight, you've got an amendment that we're looking to add. Could you just cover that real quick with us as long as you're standing here?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. On item 39 for tonight's agenda, we have on SIRE a proposed amendment that Councilor Kiley, will be bringing forth. And it will state that the proposed moratorium would cover any installation on any, not cover installation on any existing permit, but only cover no more further issuance of permits. So if you have a permit in your hand, you have 6 months to begin construction on that permit. If you have a permit in your hand already, you can continue with that.
The installation covers from the point that a permit has been issued, really, right?
Correct. Yep. And then by ordinance, they have 6 months, Counselor, in order to begin work. And I forget the exact language in there, but they don't have to have it completely done, but they have to have some noticeable improvements and work towards fulfilling that permit.
And just real quick, if can a applicant receive a permit for a space without having a lease agreement with the landowner? Could you get one without the other?
I would defer to Mike Cooper on that one. I believe you could, but I am not familiar with exact that nuance of it, Counselor.
Okay.
We'll have that answer by 7 o'clock.
Okay, well, that'd be good. Thank you. Thank you.
Obviously, you could have a permit, but without permission or lease, you wouldn't be able to do anything, so, yeah.
Well, the reason I ask is because you could be in negotiations with that lease, still obtain a permit, but not ever at the end up with a lease because you couldn't come to terms.
Right.
I think a lot of people don't understand how the whole process works, that the landowner has to agree. It isn't that you can just get zoned for a billboard or a permit and you just go plop it in somewhere because it's zoned right. It's the landowner really is a whole nother picture that needs to participate in, and so I just saw that as a potential timeline that needed to be covered. That's all.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mr. Fifley. We are to the point of City Council open discussion, if we haven't already kind of broached that subject, I guess, but any other items for City Council open discussion? Councilor Jameson.
If I could, I was going to actually talk about somewhat in reference to billboards again. It's funny how billboards have come into the circle of discussion lately, but this whole Sioux Falls has jobs.com initiative. I'd asked Dave Fifley earlier in the day to maybe give us an update on just how it is that a department head or departments can authorize spending or create spending through that professional services provision. And I was trying to understand the language. And so if Attorney Fifley has maybe just to give us an understanding of how that process works and how that essentially is allowed.
Counselor, just for reference for everyone, professional services defined by state statute as services arising out of a vocation, calling, occupation, or employment involving specialized knowledge, labor or skill, and the labor or skill involved is predominantly mental or intellectual rather than physical or manual. And the contract approval ordinance found in Chapter 36 sets forth that which contracts are to go to the City Council for approval is what I'm understanding your question was, and that dollar threshold would be $25,000. So if it is a contract for professional services that is under $25,000, it would only need to be approved by the mayor himself.
I have a question. Can I have a follow-up to that? Just thinking aloud here, with the 25,000, but if there's an additional contract that has to be, say, renewed, like any other website or any other professional work that's then going to kick it over the 25,000, it comes to us, is that?
Yes, that's where that per vendor, per calendar year, Counselor, would come into effect if it's accumulating in that one calendar year over the $25,000 threshold.
Okay, but the initial spend can be done.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And then come back to us for approval after a project has already been created and put in place. Thank you.
Councilor Urbanbach.
I have a new topic, if we're done with this one. Okay. Councilor Anderson and I went last night to the Bishop Dudley Hospitality House community meeting, and I just wanted to kind of chat about that just for a minute. It was overall a positive experience for me anyway. I did spend some time after the meeting talking with members of the neighborhood and folks who were interested in sharing their stories. We did require this meeting, and we require one more meeting for the conditional use permit for that building. And so there will be another community meeting under that requirement, but I think the feeling last night was that they will probably have community meetings for 3 months at a time for the next year or maybe longer, just to allow folks to come in and see the facility, to meet staff, to express their concerns, to share their joys. I mean, there were people last night with very supportive comments, but there were some folks that still have trouble with it and are concerned, and there were many representatives. I thank city staff for being there. I think there were lots of police officers there last night, in a friendly capacity, just talking through how does this relationship work, how do we go about making this a better neighborhood. And it was, I thought, a great experience. I don't know if Councilor Anderson wants to add to it, but I would just say if there are folks that have concerns or have interest in the Bishop Dudley House, to either contact Chad Campbell at the Bishop Dudley House, or either, any of us on the council would certainly hear concerns as well. But overall, a really, very positive meeting last night, so.
Counselor?
I'd like to agree totally with Councilor Urfenbach on this. I think that I myself went into the meeting getting ready to, listen to a lot of complaints, and it was exactly the opposite. We had business owners, homeowners. There was concerns that they did have, but generally the operations of the facility was not really one of them. And I think they had a better ideal and their arms around what the problems are in that area, and that the law enforcement officers that were there are the officers that are assigned to that district. So it made it even a better meeting to allow the public to be able to speak directly to people who are going to interact with them if they do have any further issues. One of the things I thought was very unique and proactive by the center is that they have hired a private security company, and that company is driving the perimeter of the facility within about a 3 to 4 block area and monitoring the alleyways and what's happening in that neighborhood. So there's even another blanket of security that has been provided over in that area at this time to try to address the changes that have happened there. So I agree with Councilor Urfenbach that, and I think the neighborhood did also, is that let's give them a little more time. Let's work on the issues in the neighborhood. It's an issue that's even a little further out than that. It's more than just the homeless problem over there. There's other issues that need to be dealt with, and I feel the city is moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Counselor. Other input? Other subjects? All righty. We will move on to then. Counselor?
I moved a proposed executive session to consult with legal counsel about proposed or pending litigation or contractual matters pursuant to South Dakota CL 1-25-2, item 3.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We will adjourn for executive session. The next meeting will be the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. Thank you.